Hello, welcome to Tracking Month. I'm chatting with Andrea Marsh. Andrea, do you want to tell us a bit about what you do?
Hi there, I'm Andrea from Menopause. I'm a shiatsu and Chinese medicine practitioner, and I help you resolve your symptoms naturally and effectively.
Awesome. So, tracking. It's literally my favourite subject, as you know.
I know.
Where do you start? How do you use it with your clients?
Yeah, so I try to minimize it because I sit across from a lot of clients and you almost see eye rolling at the thought of it. It sounds like homework, doesn't it? Oh, I've got to track. And especially if I might say sometimes when we're talking about we're working backwards, why their sleep's not working. And I go, well, just give me an average evening meal. And then I wait and I wait and I wait because they're just like, oh, an average evening meal. So I appreciate how women feel about tracking. But let me take you back to my previous job and now my job as a Chinese medicine, where we work on symptoms and patterns. And my previous job was all to do with data analysis in computers. And when the techie, big paid for programmers were just floored that their computer software may not work, I would always have to prove why the software wasn't working. So I had to look for patterns in data. So it's patterns. Patterns are the answer to a lot of things. And that's the only way you can tell an egotistical programmer that there might be a flaw in their program. And so when in Chinese medicine, we look at grouping symptoms and we look for patterns. So the way to resolving your menopause is through understanding what's going on in your body daily, monthly, the relationship between food and sleep, stress and sleep, energy and sleep. So we're not expecting you to come to conclusions or results out of those patterns because it may just look like a mess to you. But then when you hand that over to somebody like me, I'm going, oh yeah, okay, got it. And then I'll give you the answer.
Yeah.
So it's the tracking. It can be as simple as you want. And I do think simple is better than complex. And I can't remember if it was you or somebody else that said, keep your tracking journal in whatever format it is, separate from your emotional journaling.
Oh, no, that wasn't me. I like it.
Okay. And I thought that was a good idea, really, because, and I would say do the emotional journaling first. So the emotional journaling most of the time is a bit of a rant and you may not even want to read it again. So you keep that separate. So tracking could be a table on an A4 sheet of paper that you use every day, sounding very dull and very office-like, I know. It could be a wonderfully produced journal tracking book. I don't know if you know anybody that's produced one of those.
No.
I'm sure it's still available on Amazon. And I also have some
Did you mean this one?
Oh, yeah. And I do find, and then there's the women that want to do it electronically, and there's the women that like to do it good old-fashioned pen and paper. For me, I would just have some marks on a calendar so I could see it at a glance. So maybe even produce just a template that looks like a monthly calendar where you can just have different little icons that mean things, because it's about creating patterns. And I want you to do this for yourself because that's how you have a great menopause. Be curious about what's causing your symptoms is the way to resolve your symptoms.
Absolutely. And this is why I love the topic of tracking, because I know it can feel like it's another thing to do, but actually once you just get into the habit of it, and whether it's on an app, whether it's on a piece of paper, I mean, it takes approximately 5 seconds out of your day. So it's not something that is a big arduous thing. It's not like when people go, oh, well, make time to do a half-hour meditation every day. We're not saying that. We're saying find 5 seconds to scribble with a particular coloured pen on a piece of paper, if that's how you choose to do it, or to open an app and click a couple of buttons. But then once you have that data, as you say, it means that a practitioner like you, Andrea, can start to see where the patterns are, what's going on, but also then for the individual, once you've started seeing those patterns, it's so much easier to kind of, in inverted commas, forgive yourself for the times when you feel crap, and celebrate the times when you feel good, and to start seeing those little things. I mean, I know my anger response is totally different at different times of my cycle. My cycle at the moment is not following any standard sort of a process whatsoever in terms of length of cycle, but the anger response is still there, clear as day, 2 days out. And I'm like, oh, I'm not expecting to be coming on yet, but I've responded very different. And so
hormones are still there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's still going on then. So I think, you know, to anybody who's thinking, oh, tracking just feels like it's homework and it's too much. It's so huge in terms of what it can tell you about yourself and about your responses to things and about all of it, that I would suggest everybody give it a go in whatever format works for you.
I like a format where you've got an overview, where you can see at a glance. That might be because of the way my brain works and because of my history, but because I know some people use the electronic app Balance, but as long as if you're putting data into something like Balance, as long as you can view that data back so you can see your patterns, and I honestly don't know because I haven't looked at it, but I know a lot of people say, oh, I put it all into Balance, which is great for the designers of Balance because they're getting your data, like Facebook get your data and all these other people, they're collecting your data, which is money to them, it's gold to them. But you've got to be seeing that data, which is why I kind of liked my calendar, because I just had 4 or 5 icons to mean things, and I could just daub them on, and I could then, that overview, like you say, the anger response happening like bang on 28 days when maybe the periods aren't, still means the energetic hormonal cycles in your body are doing this, even though your periods are doing something completely different. And sometimes you can't link these things to your periods anymore, especially because, and it's amazing how many women say, haven't had periods for X amount of time, but I still have a cycle. Yes.
Yeah.
The you know, the universe has a cycle. You know, the moon goes around 28 days, and we are so intrinsically linked to what the moon is doing, whether you believe in that or not, we are. So, you know, it's bang on track. It's not faltering its course. It's not having a menopause. So a lot of what's going on in our body and our psyche will still be sitting with that, even if our periods,
and I think that
our periods are doing.
I think that raises a really important point, because one of the biggest pushbacks that I ever hear about tracking is, oh, because of such and such birth control, or because of whatever, or blah, 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 I don't have a period.
Yeah.
And I think there is this perception that tracking is only about those days that you bleed.
No.
And it's not for the rest of the time, when actually in the context of perimenopause, it's about getting to know what your symptoms are, getting to know all of that information, it's pulling together Project Me to be able to say, right, here's all the data, practitioner person, please can you decipher all this data for me, because I don't know, but here's the data. And
I've got 2 perfect examples of that actually. For myself, one was a very, very early 40s, let's say 42, or maybe even 40 actually, but anyway, that kind of age, you know, menopause wasn't even in my vocabulary then, let alone peri. And I realized I was waking up with night sweats on a Saturday night. Dog may kick off in a moment. So I was, and like I said, I started tracking this, nothing to do with menopause, but to do with me having night sweats on a Saturday night. And it became quite clear as soon as I actually gave it a thought that well, the first thing I ruled out was stress, because I was like, well, hang on, if I'm sleeping, I think it probably started more as sleeping badly rather than as night sweat, started sleeping badly. And I was like, well, Sunday night should be bad because I'm going back into work on a Monday. Friday should be bad because I'm de-stressing from the week. But it wasn't happening on any of those nights. It was happening on a Saturday night. And it was food and drink in the end. And yet I had the same food and drink roughly on a Saturday as a Sunday. But then the time was different. Saturday was normally 8-9 o'clock, and was probably indulgences, you know, let's say takeaways and wine and everything, whereas Sunday was a bit more roast with wine still, but earlier in the day. So it wasn't just wine, it wasn't stress, it was combination of food and time food eaten at. So I sorted out my night sweats, and I haven't had them since, or if I do get them, then I know what's caused it, etc., etc. So that wasn't even menopause. Now, much more recently, I realized it was in a bit of a grumbly mood on a Monday morning. I know, and I'm self-employed now, so it's not the stress of going back into an office environment. And again, I thought, well, because I'd noticed this was a pattern on a Monday morning, and it was pretty much, I still do those indulgences on Saturdays and Sundays. It's just I'm symptom free because I've sorted myself out. But what I wasn't doing over the weekend was taking my supplements. So I was overindulging, plus not taking on board my nutrition richness that I'd have during the week. So what I realized when that became a pattern and I was a bit insecure or whatever on a Monday, I was like, why is anxiety so bad on a Monday? I'd have a vegetable soup on a Monday lunchtime, take my supplements, and I'd be fine literally by 2 p.m. Monday afternoon. I'd bounce back. So really those have got nothing to do with my periods.
No, exactly. And I mean, my first foray into tracking was trying to work out what was going on with my energy levels, with the fatigue that I was experiencing. And I mean, I tracked and the app I used didn't have any means of pulling the data out unless you paid, and I wasn't prepared to pay. So I painstakingly
and that's because you're helping them. They're not actually helping you at that point.
No, absolutely. But so I painstakingly put it all into Excel so that then I could play around with the data.
Yeah.
And there it was. And yes, actually where my period fell in relation to when the really low fatigue was relevant.
Yeah.
But I was looking at the fatigue, and it happened to then show me that it always happened in the few days leading up to my period.
Yeah.
And again, it was just that thing of going, oh, right, gotcha. And as soon as I put it into Excel and played around with it and done some graphs and, you know, all the fun stuff that you do in Excel, I have also previously worked in data.
I try not to keep bringing back to spreadsheets, but
but you know, spreadsheets. And suddenly it was there, just large as life. Like, oh right, gotcha. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's why, like, so that we both came back to, yes, putting the data in is powerful, but actually the overall power, the change comes from the overview of the data, analyzing your results. And if you're not capable of that, of course, that's what we're all here to help you with. But yeah, you need the results of that data too.
Absolutely. And that's where, you know, just to, you know, move away from the apps, because they do not want to wholly show you all the data, and I get that. You know, if you have just a piece of paper on the fridge, you know, and it's
I think that's the best thing.
And it's the 4 weeks.
28 squares on the fridge.
Yeah. And if you want to do it with stickers, make it fun, you know, have different sort of stickers depending on what your mood is, depending on what your energy levels are, whatever. Anything that means that at a really quick glance, you can see what those patterns are, what the trends are, what's going on.
Yeah. So say you did it with just post-it notes or something, and a post-it note, 7 colors of post-it notes, let's say, so, you know, for each day of the week. And then people say, well, and this is where we separate tracking a little bit from journaling. I think it's good to separate those two words, because journaling is more that you're writing stuff, whereas tracking can just be signs and squiggles and whatever you want to. And it's really important to, as well as how you're feeling, you know, energy high, energy low, bit somebody's head off, or, you know, so instead of maybe being too wordy about it, just, you know, anger day or sulky day or insecure day, you know, keep it short. But you also want to add into that maybe the exercise that you've done, the food you've eaten. And that's not to say break down every single food, but if you just said dinner pizza as opposed to dinner roast has got vegetables in, but if you've had a cheese feast, it probably hasn't got any greenery on it. So if you don't feel so great the day after a cheese feast, but you feel better after a roast, then we start seeing the differences. So that's exercise, that's food, how you slept, and what your moods are, and energy levels, of course. Would you add anything else to that?
Beyond that, I think it then comes down to individuals, doesn't it? So some people might want to look at how work is, you know, and keep a tally on what the stress levels are like at work or at home. Some people might want to keep tallies on hydration, you know, because that can have a huge impact. Some people might want to keep a track on waking up time or going to bed time, you know, if that's something that you're working on. And there's all these things. And the first stage is getting into the habit of tracking.
Yeah.
The second stage is then going, okay, what's going to be useful for me?
Yeah.
Not what's useful for anybody else. It simply doesn't matter what's useful for anybody else.
Yeah.
What's useful for me? Is it the times when you get spots? Is it the times when you get, you know, headaches? Is it the time? Doesn't matter. And this is the beauty of tracking, is it simply doesn't matter what you track,
I think
so long as it's what's relevant for you.
Yeah, you've summarized it perfectly. What is useful for me? And when you start out on day one, you won't be perfect. And anybody that's worked in data knows that when you start analyzing data, what you're analyzing in, say, 3 days or 3 weeks' time doesn't compare to how you start out. So start out simply, get the habit going, which will take you probably 3 to 4 weeks. And then you go, oh, but actually I really want to know this now. So you add it in. There might be some stuff you can drop because you go, oh, that's blinking obvious. I just know that now. So it does become more complex the more you do it. And then as you see patterns, you resolve things, those can drop off and you can add more in. So as you can tell, Emily and I get very excited about data and patterning.
Yes. But it is so powerful. And this is the thing. And I think this is why I feel like in each of the interviews on this subject, I get a little bit overexcitable, but it's just such a powerful way of getting to know your own body, getting to spot your own triggers for all sorts of different things, getting to understand your symptoms, getting to understand actually that your symptoms may not be as bad as you're thinking, because we often are prone to thinking, oh, I had a migraine for a day, that whole month I felt like I had a migraine. When actually, if you've tracked it, you see that it was for one day or whatever, you know, that's probably not a great example, but once you start getting to know the patterns, and maybe you see that it isn't so much linked to your food and drink as such, but it's that just at certain times in your cycle, your sleep is less good. Well, once you started seeing that pattern, you
can prepare for it.
You can prepare for it. And also when you do then inevitably wake up or just sleep badly, you're not straight into that cycle of, oh God, I'm sleeping so badly, everything's terrible, my life is over. You're into the cycle of, oh, let's have a look at the tracking. Oh, hang on. All these other things are pointing to the fact that my period is probably due. Yeah. So it makes sense that I'm having that sleepless night.
Yeah, and you hit on another really good point there. You're on fire today, Emily. It's actually, it can make you more positive. Being positive, being curious, saying I don't know, because when you start out on these things, it's okay not to know. It's not about having the answers at the start. It's about building something to help you see something clearer. So you can become more positive. You can see, actually, I've got these symptoms and they clump around a certain time of the month. That's powerful to know that. You should actually feel happier that you know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe when you've got that information in your pocket, you'll feel more comfortable going and speaking to someone, because a lot of women feel like they're maybe put down by their GPs because they're going in and everything's coming out in an emotional jumble. But actually, if you go in actually with, I've tracked this, here's the paperwork, then you will feel more confident because you actually know yourself better. And this will also help you if you go into work and need to speak to them as well.
But also, if you massively simplify things, doctors are scientists. They need data. That is everything that they do is based around data. So if you can add data, you're helping them to help you. You're making it so much easier for them to actually be able to help you, for any practitioner to actually be able to help you. If you can go, look, here's a couple of months worth of what's going on. I don't know what any of this is telling me, but you can probably understand it.
And it is when we're listening to you speak, and I, in my shiatsu for menopause or my consultations, I allow a lot more time because I appreciate everything is embedded in emotion. So we are absolutely empathizing with your emotion, but we're waiting for the data in between the emotion, because it's the data we want to work with as whilst we're allowing you to emote. So if you can in some way have separated that out for people, then they can help you quicker, which is going to be either cheaper or actually far, far easier for you.
Yeah, and it becomes just a win-win, doesn't it? Because you're helping the practitioner to meet you halfway.
Yeah.
And then they can start helping you so much more quickly.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Because I do ask my ladies to fill in forms beforehand so that I've got a bit of that data already, and then I can expand on the places of interest. But you know that if in a consultation, you know, in an hour's or so consultation, if you've done that information, then you're going to get back somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes of your consultation to get into the real in depth. But if you come to a consult, and I do appreciate I try to prepare women so they don't come to a consultation not knowing what's going on, because I want them to have that quality of result. And we're going to get that if we've done some groundwork. And that is what supplements you're on, how are you taking them, and also everything we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
So think of, if you help or you've done any of this kind of information, you're going to make then your time with any professional a far, far more quality result for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to me, all of those things combined, getting to know yourself better, helping the professional to help you, and all of those things, just, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer that tracking's brilliant.
Yeah. Now, what I did want to touch on was if people are still listening to us and go, oh my God, but I don't have the energy to track. My brain fog means I don't even know which way to hold a pen, let alone switch an app on, because I know women can get to this point. Sadly, they've got to that point. I would say pop some vitamins and minerals just to help your body. If nothing else, do that, because you're starting to feed your brain again. You're starting to give yourself a bit of energy. I've got a free supplements guide on my website that you can go and grab all this information, because I do appreciate it when you've got no brain, no energy, no motivation, that even Emily, in all her bubbliness of tracking's fun, it just feels like too much. So start pushing in vitamins and minerals, and then as soon as you feel, oh, there's a little glimmer of hope that things are changing, then get some clarity on your tracking, or get a book which steps you through it, I guess.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea.
You're welcome. Take care.